You're tuned in to Season 3 of the Bird Joy podcast, hosted by Dexter Patterson and Jason Hall. This podcast is for all the homies across the globe, a place to celebrate birds, community, and joy together. We're back with more stories from the birding world, more voices doing dope work in STEM, and more reasons to get outside and enjoy the birds. Are you ready for some bird joy? Let's go.
We are so excited to welcome today's guest to the Bird Joy podcast, an environmental educator, urban birder, and self-described ambidextrous nature lover.
She's also a proud Cleveland native and graduate of the Ohio State University, where she earned her degree in natural resources with a focus on environmental education and interpretation.
For over a decade, she's been doing the work, folks, partnering with environmental nonprofits to help communities connect with nature in more inclusive, meaningful, and equitable ways.
Nicole was also one of the co-organizers of Black Birders Week and launched Black in National Parks Week to celebrate and highlight Black experiences in and on our public lands.
She also co-created a course with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology called Let's Go Outside, How to Connect Kids with Birds and Nature, a fantastic resource for families and educators who want to nurture curiosity and confidence in the outdoors.
And she's not done yet, folks. After all that, Nicole is working on a documentary film and continues using her voice, creativity, and passion to build stronger connections between people and the natural world.
Nicole is a leader, a connector, and a joyful force in this space. Nicole Jackson, welcome to the Bird Joy podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this podcast and so excited to see you both again. We had brief time at the biggest week, so I'm glad to share more of my experiences in Bird Joy with you all.
Yay!
Oh, that's so great. And like, how are you doing? Because this is the end of Black Birders Week, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just the week, it's the months that lead up to it.
Yep.
And you are one of the folks that are currently, you have your hands on it. You're running stuff, you're scheduling stuff. You were on a ton of the different events that we had virtually during the week. So did you get some rest last night? Are you okay? How are you doing? Is your cup full? Like Dexter, before we get into anything, Dexter and I just want to check on the homie, make sure you're doing all right.
Yes, I am. I actually did get good sleep, good enough. I tend to plan for rest, even though I'm feeling tired and I'm so exhausted, but I'll end up staying up past when I should. I think I went to bed around 2 a.m., but it wasn't because of Black Birders Week stuff. It was just because my brain was racing and thinking about transitioning into the next couple of weeks of things that I have to do. But other than that, last night, just thinking about the wrap up of the last day of Black Birders Week was really awesome. And I did a short park visit, one of our metro parks, before I wrapped up the day. I actually got a really cool barred owl sighting, which was really fun. So
nice.
I legit was just chill, relax. We wrapped up, the week. We had so much engagement online and offline, and just being able to experience other Black people and their joy with birding and nature connection just keeps me feeling inspired and full.
Well, if no one else has said it yet, thank you, Nicole, for everything you do for us for Black Birders Week.
Just so much.
It's always incredible.
Thank you.
I don't think you guys get enough thanks after the amount of work that goes into that. So just want to say that to start.
Yeah. And I just want to thank the rest of the team, because we're all scattered across the U.S. So there's people in New York, there's people in California, there's people in Georgia and Texas. So we're all kind of working, very small group of us working on a national, I would say semi-international scale of putting all of these things together while still trying to maintain that authenticity around the work that we do. So I thank the rest of the team and their hard work and us staying engaged, but also sharing our joy within the work, because we're wanting to bird and engage just as much as our supporters.
Sure. Yeah. And I, just to pivot it there a little bit, you are continuing to find this joy in the outdoors through the work, sometimes through the result of the work. But take us back a little bit, right? What sparked your love of the outdoors, or environmental education for that matter? Because I don't think you separate the two all the time, right? I think just being around you, just to say to the people, you were always looking for, even when we were out leisurely at Biggest Week, you were looking for opportunities to help people, to get them on birds, to talk to them, to see how they were doing. And so like, what sparked that love of nature and then that additional love of like educating others in nature?
Yeah, I think it's part of just how I grew up in inner city Cleveland. I have 10 siblings, 7 sisters and 3 brothers, was raised by a single parent, my mother, and my connection started when I was 5 or 6. And that was actually a really challenging, traumatic time for me was when I was in foster care. And I was with one of my older siblings, my sister, and we were put into a foster care home together. And unfortunately, we experienced abuse while in foster care. So safety, just thinking about safety, when I would be back with my other siblings, when I would be back with my mom, like us all being together again, there was just a lot of unknowns and having to adapt to a new place within, a different part of Cleveland, new family, new people, like all of these things. But it wasn't like a typical, like, you're with, this awesome family that's going to make sure you're taken care of. That was not the case for me, unfortunately, and my sister. So having to be in survival mode at 5 or 6 years old, and then trying to just manage, our mental health and well-being while going through that, because we didn't have helpers, we didn't have allies, we didn't have people that could keep us, safe, because we were part of this system that was already running on fumes. So to have to figure out how I could best take care of myself in those moments, it was going outside in the backyard, and actually not being like, part of the abuse was not being able to engage with other people. We actually had neighbors next door that had 2 twin boys that I can recall, and we couldn't play with them, we couldn't talk to them, and we stayed in the house a lot outside of going to school. So our school was right up, around the block, like a couple blocks away. So I do have memories of engaging with kids and some adults, but it was just for school. But outside of that, we rarely engaged socially. So was just the silence, I guess. It was just the silence and that nurturing feeling, that nature, like seeing green and hearing nature. It wasn't even birds in particular, because I hadn't even had an interest in birds at that time, but it was just that feeling of calm and serenity and needing something to help me manage all of my emotions of feeling scared and confused and anxious and depressed. And all I had was my sister, but I couldn't even explain those feelings to her. So nature was that person for me that I could just feel the things, even if it was like urban backyard nature, I could just feel the things. And then I felt like nature was receiving all of that and coming back to me as like, yes, thank you for just releasing, but also I'm here to help you as best I can. Like, we're doing this together. And that's when I started to develop a more intimate relationship with nature, because it started out as a mental health therapy tool for me.
Wow. I mean, Nicole, first of all, thank you for sharing that testimony, because there are a lot of people out there that go through trauma and childhood trauma and don't talk about it. And I think for you to be able to get to this point where you're able to express what you went through, that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of healing too. And I know one thing, I always say that I'm a firm believer that nature heals. Mm-hmm. What role has that nature, when you found out that it was there for you and it was listening to you, what role has that played in your healing and your growth since you found that over the years?
It played a major role. Like, it gave me a voice. I felt, being in foster care, I felt invisible, and it gave me a voice because I could connect with things that I wanted to talk about, which was, how being out in the sun made me feel, or listening to the wind, or watching, the different animals frolic around, or even I do have a vivid memory of grapevines that grew in the backyard, just watching the colors, like of the grapes that would grow in the leaf colors, like very vivid memories of just being up close and personal with nature. And it gave me a voice. So I feel like that was the biggest thing for me, was to just be able to talk about my experiences, because I didn't have an identity yet. It was just, I was still really, really young, just trying to figure out how to not feel scared anymore and just be able to share my thoughts and feelings, however they may have appeared, and not feel shame as well. I was also seeking the people pleasing, and just wasn't quite sure what I was doing wrong. Like, felt like I was at fault, even though it wasn't clear of what the reason was, but I needed to fix it. So in those moments of I need to make things right, I would just be quiet a lot, because I felt like the more I talked, the more I was cause problems or make people think less of me, like, by the things that I said. So like, it just felt more comfortable for me to just be quiet and behind the scenes, which I still have difficulties with now as an adult, but like, it makes more sense why those challenges still linger, because of the childhood trauma. I'm more accepting of it now, but I think when I was experiencing it at that age, 5 or 6 years old, I felt so lost and defeated. And it was just hard for me to really just speak out what I was feeling and what I was going through. And sometimes I didn't even know exactly what the emotion was or what the feeling was. It just wasn't comfortable. It wasn't fun. And I would have a lot of conversations internally with nature of just, I hate these feelings. I just want to go home. I want to be with my family. I want to feel normal. Like, all these conversations of just like, I just want things to get better. If for a moment that nature would distract me, I'd be okay. Because it's just like, okay, I don't have to think about what I'm going through and what I'm experiencing in such a negative way. Nature just opened me up to like, okay, yes, this is a very hard situation and it sucks. The sun is out. The leaves are green.
That is a word.
The wind is blowing.
Wow. That's that gratitude of every moment in nature. I would tell people birding isn't about the birds. It's about that sunshine. It's about that wind blowing on your face or that water running. And what I think about too, and especially with Black Birders Week just wrapping up, and I often tell people there was kind of like a spark bird moment for me, like an osprey moment for me, because I was like, wait a minute, we really out here in all these different places. And I remember going to some of these traditional spaces when I started trying to figure out my identity and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to show up in the world. And it was like, birds, I love them so much, but I was afraid to tell people that I loved them. And I would go to these traditional spaces and I did not feel seen. I didn't see people that looked like me. I didn't see anybody that talked like me or thought about me or went through trauma and different things. And I've been pretty open about some of the struggles that I've had as a kid with childhood trauma and mental health and things like that. And I know you have, and I always admire you about that, because we have voices and platforms. And I always want people to know you're not alone, that there are people out there and there's still joy waiting for you on the other side. And with Black Birders Week, what I started to see all these Black and brown people showing up in these spaces, Nicole, and reclaiming their power. Yeah. Like showing up at these places like, no, you will not keep this from me. No more. Like, we're showing up. We out here. This is for us, and reclaiming that joy. So I just love hearing you be able to talk about this, because I don't think people realize that when we speak out, we help other people try to find their joy and their path and to healing. So thank you again for just being you.
Yeah. And this is the part of my life where I just turned 37, and I'm very grateful to have another year of life to reflect on. And that part of it, like the joy, like you can eventually get to the joy, because I felt like when I was younger that there was never going to be any joy. There was always going to be darkness. And once I realized the importance of realizing how valuable I was because I existed, oh my goodness, like I fought for myself even more because I realized that. And like, just knowing, like, I still have so much more evolving and growing to do, but like, it was hard. It was hard to fight those thoughts, those negative thoughts, because I couldn't, at the time, there's no one I could relate to, like share and like connect with and say, oh, there's other people going through this. So like, I can talk about it. So there was just so much shame shrouded over it, but also like, the shame part for me was just like, that was my 24/7. That was my just feeling guilty, feeling shame, feeling awkward, feeling like I had no purpose. And that's why I got more into the education layer, because when I was going to school, that was kind of my secondary place of joy, was school and learning and education.
Mm.
And that was kind of like my shield and my like protector. It was just like, okay, if you know things and learn things, then you won't feel so like strange or odd or awkward, because people talk to people that know things. So that was like my, and it wasn't even necessarily nature at that time, because again, it was a therapy thing. So I kept that to myself, but I always had this thought in the back of my mind that this is not something I want to keep to myself. I want to share it with other people, because I saw how much of an impact it was having on me. So I'm like, oh, I can help other people feel this way and not, so lost and closed off. That was just, okay, what can I do with my learning to get to know more about myself, but also help other people engage with themselves through the things that they love and enjoy. And that was my kind of entry into just nature as a whole as I got older. And then it became more specific things like biology and habitats and ecosystems, and how those things, as far as human interactions with the natural world, have impact on each other. So like all of the connections in life was just something I was very fascinated with, because I think about that in terms like as it relates to the mutualistic relationships versus symbiotic relationships versus those things that like, oh my gosh, this makes sense to me because this is what's happening with humans. They just don't realize that they're guarding themselves, or they're afraid to speak up because they don't feel like they have support. And in nature, I feel like those things are figured out, or they have solutions pretty quickly, because they are just surviving and trying to prolong their life expectancy. But we as humans make things so much more complicated. So that's what's just like, why can't it just be these simple equations and puzzle pieces that are being put together to create that fuller picture of what life can be if we just block out all the noise and the distractions and the self-defeating thoughts and conversations with ourselves. So nature fascinated me in that way. And I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but I want to talk about this because this showed up in The Residents, the Netflix series. And one of the episodes really stood out to me for that reason. Cordelia, who's played by Uzo Aduba in the Netflix show The Residents, talks about like why she became a detective, like how she uses her birding background to help solve cases, but also to help better understand people and their kind of dynamics when it comes to communication, when it comes to manipulation or deception or nurturing and love, like all of these different things. So like, oh my goodness, this just that one episode where she's explaining to her nephew, because her sister was he wanted to go birding with her. They went to go look for this bird and it was taking forever. And were sitting having this conversation about why she is the way she is. And some of the words he used was just like stubborn, not as compromising. Like he was just saying all these words that his mom used to describe her sister. But she sat down with him and like went around the background story of her relationship with her sister and how she wanted to help her find a missing strawberry sock. And it was interesting in like how she was explaining and sharing the story, because it's like she went through the whole like intricate process of like, she was drawing pictures and like looking for the sock everywhere, and very like a detective like, but also she just didn't want to see her sister sad. So she just went through all of this just to make sure, her sister was okay. And then she ended up finding the sock, but like just the personal elements of that story of just how we show up as people and why we show up in the way we do. Because like towards the end, she said that's probably how, not how everybody operates, but that's just how I am. That was just her saying that I accept who I am. I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me. But also just thinking back to like there's a root. Because we tend to do that, people that are very type A or very, whimsical, and they don't really have a care in the world. And it's just like, you're too this or you're too that. And that just spoke to me because it really took me back to that place of what I was experiencing when I was in foster care and even up through my teenage years of wanting to help, but also I just do things in a specific way and like really telling myself that it's okay to be who I am, the way that I am. That was just a really enlightening, emotional. I actually teared up watching that episode because I'm just like, yes, that's me. You're
Yeah, you
speaking
gotta
about
be
me.
you. You gotta
And
be
like,
you.
it's very like pragmatic, like logical, logistical, like very planned type of personality, but it makes sense for her and how she shows up. But there is still value to that. I'm a very introspective person. I like information. I like details. I like learning about all of the things, but it's helping me connect to people through learning things. I felt like I couldn't actually talk to people beyond what I was interested in. Like there was just never like, people scare me, or I don't know if they're going to try to use me or abuse me or manipulate me. So it's just like, I'm just going to keep quiet. I'm not going to say too much. And then when I started talking about nature, I felt like a whole different person. I was just like, I could talk about this stuff for hours. So to me, that was just like, I had this whole other kind of underlying personality that I can like, okay, this is what I can use to reconnect with people that I felt like would just disappoint me or end up, I couldn't trust or things like that. So I'm very grateful for the relationship again that I have with nature because it helped me be more trusting and open to building more relationships.
And I want to kind of build on that a little bit, right? Because some of the interactions I've seen you have out in nature with people, and I don't know if I told this story on the podcast before though, but like when you came out here for bird walk years ago, and we went to the visitor center, and like you just started walking up to every black or brown person you saw, and you were like, "Hey, how's it going? Why are you here? What's going on? What do you like here? Like, what do you love about Valley Forge National Historic Park?" Right? Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, "Man, she's really out there. Like, she's going up to folks." And but you do, on the other side of that, you do describe yourself as an ambivert, right? As someone that can be both an introvert and an extrovert. And I wonder how you adapt those communication styles, right, depending on your setting. Because in that moment, right, you're going up to adults and trying to see what was good with them, right? But I've also seen you interact with kids, right? Dexter and I watched you do some of that documentary. And so like, how do you judge and how do you shift gears in those situations and understand when and how to use either your extrovert skills or your introvert skills?
I listen and learn. So I'm very observant. And I think this is useful that I'm a Gemini. Because I can
likewise.
Let's
go.
The duality,
let's go, Gemini.
Yes, with the duality of things, I can go into my introvert mode, but also be in my extroverted mode. So very hummingbird, butterfly type of energy, but also very chill, calm, waterfowl type of energy as well. So I think for me, it's just being observant of knowing how to read the room. Like I had to learn those things really early being in foster care, of just being more attentive and listening and paying attention to not only what people are saying, but their body language. That's a big part of learning, even in, within the natural sciences fields of, and doing field work. Like you have to be watching and observing and be very patient to get information, but also not to even come to a conclusion, but to just have more than you started with. So I feel like the more observant and patient I am, which I learned from nature, the more surprises that will happen that I don't expect, but I'm so thankful for, more of the serendipitous moments. And those can happen through conversations. Those can happen through watching someone else, light up through having an experience. And it's just so I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a warm, it's beyond a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's so much more than that. So I just being amongst people that have their own shine. That's what I'm attracted to. And within that shine that they have, they're being their most authentic self, whether I'm there or not. So I think that's what I'm drawn to, of oh my goodness, they're just living their life how they want to without terms or expectations. And I've seen that with kids. I've seen that with adults. I've seen that with seniors. And to be able to talk to someone, just talk to them, not even expecting anything of them, but just having a conversation and listening to their experiences and their stories about how they connect and how they enjoy and how they bond, I think gives more of that connection feeling that lasts long. Like happiness and joy are two very different things. Happiness is a very temporary feeling. It's very fleeting. But joy, it sustains you, because I have a lot of those moments where I don't think I would have been able to. Nature in so many ways, like figuratively and literally, saved my life. When I think about moments where I was just like, I don't think I can make it on this earth. Like those types of thoughts. I don't think I need to be here anymore. Or I don't feel like I have anything to offer. I could go back to those moments where I hear my laugh, like just my laugh, or think of my siblings smiling or telling me a joke, or hearing a family member share, a fun memory, or even reading a book that has a really, cool, inspiring story. Like those things I could go back to and be like, actually, you can hang on a little bit longer. You're going to be okay. That's what I'm doing in those moments of, whether it's through birding or hiking, or connecting people with national parks. I'm collecting those sustainable moments of joy to help me get to the next thing.
Those sips from that bird joy cup are powerful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like those sips from that cup of nature are powerful, and they do sustain us. And I love that you talked about happiness being fleeting, but joy is something that we can go back to and hold on to. And I'll tell you what, Nicole, you see that in the way that you show up for your community. You see that in the way that you show up for people, whether it's Black Birders Week or you working with kids or whatever it might be. And it is evident, right? It is so evident in how you operate and how you work with people. And you've worked with so many organizations across Ohio, across the country. What have those grassroots experiences taught you about reaching people in the community and kind of meeting them where they are?
I would say that's been exciting, but also reflective. Like I feel like I'm still learning a lot, because I do feel like the work that I do is very tied to who I am. So I don't want to just be doing things for the sake of doing things. It's helping me grow and evolve. And I want to be able to go back to those experiences and pull any lesson that would be helpful for me or someone else to utilize moving forward. So, and working with different organizations or groups or grassroots organizations, I feel like it's a lot of trial and error. But I'm also just starting with who I am and what I'm interested in, and helping other people make the connections, like the non-traditional with the traditional, and like helping people bring those things together. Like, oh, have you thought about this? You might not think these two things go together, but actually
they do.
So that's what I'm like, as far as my educational, like environmental educational background, like that's what I feel like I've learned, like my own little secret weapon in the work that I do, and not, more of like the formulated stuff that you have to learn from textbooks or, workshops or anything like that. But because of my personal experiences and my relationship with nature, I can weave more in of that. Actually, we're not doing as good of a job as we think we are with building bridges and making connections with people that are long lasting, because this work is lifelong. It shouldn't just be, I mean, it can be for some people in terms of capitalism and, getting a check. But I think with environmental education and just wanting to inspire people and connect with community and inspire other people to take care of themselves and prioritize themselves in a different way, I think that's where I found gold. Like I hit it rich. And I'm just like, oh, okay, this makes so much sense for me, but it's even more helpful, again, because I took the time to develop my relationship with nature first through therapy. And then like, oh, because it's connecting in this way, I can help other people slow down and really start with the internal. Like, where are you? Who are you? Do you love yourself? Very deep, intimate questions, but also that gets you so far when you really take the time to think about it and put yourself out there in a way to get people to think beyond a job title, beyond a work responsibility, but it is the whole being that you're engaging with.
That's healing too, right? That
Sweet
is
Lord.
powerful. That is powerful. That is so powerful.
Yeah, and I know you have a company in her nature, right? And is that one of your, describe to people what some of those goals are you have with that company? Because I think that is from what I've talked to you about, it sounds like it's right in line, and that's a place where some of that learning and community building and introspection for people is going to happen. So like, tell us about that long-term goal for that particular part of your career and your experience.
Yeah, it took me a while to get to this part of my life where I felt like I don't think I ever, like there was a time where it was just like, yeah, I'm just going to work for someone the rest of my life. Like I don't need to have my own thing, because I felt like my identity was wrapped up in being told what to do by other people. And then I was just like, actually, that's not me. I think that was a like stress response or like response to, like this is what I have to do, versus this is who I want to be. I'm all about communication. So how are we communicating the things that are important to us? How are we advocating for ourselves? How are we seeking community and the people that will be there for us through the ups and downs, and not just, the toxic positivity moments,
Sure.
but the real, I'm going to have this conversation with you about holding yourself accountable or getting resources that you need when you're struggling, or even just, I'm just here to sit with you. I don't even have to say anything. Let's just sit together, be in each other's presence, and just showing someone that you're there because you love them and you appreciate them and you're willing to go through whatever it takes to get them to a better place, that you're there to be a support. I'm more so always going back to, it's like full circle moments of, this is what I was trying to say when I was younger. This is the connections I was trying to make when I was younger, but because of, the stress and like what I was going through, like it was just blocking me at every turn. And I'm like, oh. So now that I have that freedom to just explore, because I'm very much an exploration person too, I wanted to include that in the work that I do with my LLC, in her nature, specifically for Black women. And this also goes back to my relationship with my mom. So pretty much, I would say I'm the only one in my family that has this nature nerd thing. So they very much understand. They understand that Nicole is the nature girl. She knows all the things. And I don't think they really understood that I used it as a therapy tool first. I don't think we've had any deep conversations about that, but it was just more of like, because of school and like, you're learning all these things and you know all this information, you're really smart and intelligent. But I feel like I was using that as a mask to hide from what I was actually going through and feeling that I couldn't really talk to them about, because they didn't have the tools to properly help me in finding the help that I should have gotten earlier on in my life. So within her nature, I instantly thought about my mom having to raise 11 children on her own and not having time for rest. Like, I don't really remember my mom taking breaks. Like, no, you don't take breaks. You don't get to live your life. You don't get to put yourself first. And I felt like that's bizarre to me because of the experiences that I had through my nature connections. I was just like, no, but it's like, I want you to have these moments too, Mom. Like, I want you to be able to go to a park and enjoy people watching or watching a sunset or going kayaking for the first time. Like, I wanted her to have, again, this is me going back to when, I don't want to keep these things to myself. I want to share them. And my mom was one of the people that I thought of, like, I want to share those moments with her. I don't want to feel like I'm doing all these things, these fun, new and engaging things in isolation. So that's how I came up with the idea of In Her Nature. So it was just to help Black women really find joy through nature connection, find their identity through nature connection, but also help them prioritize themselves outside of, the hustle and bustle of being a Black woman that has to just be doing all the things for everybody else except for them. So that was very much a part of it. And then the educational layer. So, teaching things specifically like bird watching or about environmental justice topics. So how, clean air, clean water, like how that impacts Black women as single individuals, married individuals, families, like all of those things, because we don't really get I can't think of anything where my community, whether it was with my grandmother or my aunt, like where we were actively having those conversations about nature and the environment and how it was impacting us as far as our mental health and physical. But I felt like it was so important. So it's just like, I want to have these conversations amongst my family and community with people that look like me. And I think they knew that we always know of the after effects of those things, but we never have the conversations of like, how do we come together and get to a better place to support each other and support community through the learning that is always showcased through a white perspective.
Yeah.
Wow. Nicole, I was crazy. I'm listening to you talk about your mom and how you're saying you want her to experience the park and you want her to go kayaking. And I was like, started having all of these emotions running through me because 2 years ago, and I've talked about this with people, birding got me to my first national park, right? And it was for our Black Birders Week event. I had never been to a national park. So like that, and it's crazy because when I tell people that story, I'm like, now ask yourself why. Why is it that this person that loves nature and birds and all of these things, why is it that he has never been to a national park? And that gets to the access conversation and so many different things. So talk to me a little bit, because this makes me feel like this was part of maybe the motivation for you to launch Black in National Parks Week. What inspired you to create that, and how has that evolved for you?
Yeah, so Black in National Parks Week I created in August of 2020. So this was a few months after the first Black Birders Week was launched. And I feel like I'd been thinking about national park stuff for a while even before Black Birders Week, but just thinking about the establishment of the National Park Service, a lot of the stories that we heard in school, whether it's, the different organizations that we learned about, and again, very white. I don't remember too many Black people being talked about outside of bits and pieces here and there around the Buffalo Soldiers, but never like in depth.
Sure.
And I was
they
also
had such a huge role, which is wild too. Like
right,
they like gloss over it, but don't realize like they're literally protecting the parks, but we couldn't even go.
Yeah,
that was very much me of like, okay, I'm doing my own research, I'm reading stuff, and I'm like, why is this not being broadcast in the sky somewhere that like literally like with cloud letters, like, I literally was just like, there's so much information out there that connects to Black history and, the people that we know from our different, regions and neighborhoods that have some role in that history. And even thinking about my college years, most of my college career was natural resources, but I rarely talked about those things. I had a lot of questions about it. Nobody could really answer them for me, or they just would dismiss me. And I'm just like, that just is so, it was really annoying to me. But I'm like, okay, I remembered that school isn't the only place where you can learn. So I had to like take that and run with it, because I'm like, there's libraries, there's people in the community that are literally like historians that have information because of their own lived experiences that I could, have conversations with. There's experts and scientists and all of these things. So it's just like, okay, I have to take it upon myself, again, trial and error, just figuring things out. And again, wanting to educate myself more. But once I know enough, I want to share it with other people in the community. Essentially, during that time, I was also part of a national cohort with the National Parks Conservation Association. And it was next gen leaders. I think it was ages 18 to 30. I was brought on as a cohort member, and I signed up for, to be a part of the cohort because Audrey Peterman encouraged me to apply. And I was kind of hesitant because I'm like, oh, this is just going to focus on politics and like the government, which is like, I'm fine with to a certain extent, but like, if it doesn't come down to like the community and like, what is the community engaging with? How are they seeing these issues? Then I don't want to be a part of it. But it also helped me step outside of my comfort zone and like still bringing in some of the advocacy layers, with the politics into the storytelling, which was so much more important to me than the politics, was the storytelling. Like, are Black people going to national parks? And if they are, where are they going? What are their experiences? How does it connect to our history? And is it helping them create a legacy of those experiences for themselves and for their family. That's essentially how I created Black in National Parks, because I'm like, I've been to national parks, but again, I was doing this stuff in isolation, and I didn't want to just be like, well, it's just me out here figuring this stuff out and learning these things. And it's just like, there's so many people starting in Ohio, because there is that connection with history of the establishment of the national parks, because before it was established in 1916, it was managed under the U.S. Army, which the Buffalo Soldiers were a part of that management on the West Coast. So the first Black superintendent of the national parks was Colonel Charles Young. He eventually moved, huge military background, a lot of accolades, medals and things like that. But his home is actually a national monument site here in Ohio. So there's the history of Ohio, but also out west. And then we think about, again, the layers like the Homesteading Act and Manifest Destiny, like all of these things I was learning about, but never from a Black perspective. So I'm just like, what are we doing?
Wow.
So I was just like, I need to create something, because I don't think anybody else had, and I was kind of nervous. I was like, I don't know if I should do this. It's a lot. But then I was like, well, if nobody else is doing it, then I might as well. I really just wanted to start with everyday Black people that were visiting national parks, because I wasn't hearing enough of that, again, from family, from friends, of just like, yeah, I'm taking a trip because it's national park and I'm going to go hiking or rock climbing or kayaking. I didn't hear any of that stuff. So I'm like, I know people are doing it. I just needed to take the time to find them and share my story first of how I connect, and how, I have my passport book and I'm doing the stamps and all of that stuff. And then more people are like, yeah, I do that too. Like, I'm so excited to share my story with you. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think about you all the time. Every time I'm at Valley Forge, pretty much, just because I know that there's a perspective there, and it's something that I talk to people about when I'm there. And we are, we have this monument to the soldiers of African descent, right? And it's something. Every time I ride my bike through there, I stop there, I bird there, and I always think about, like, what must they have thought being here for that? Right. What birds were they listening to? And it's something you and I have talked about too. Like, so, kudos to you for starting that, because it really was like and is still, I think to this day, kind of a black box perspective. And it's going to take people like you and me and Dexter and others that, like, you said something a minute ago of like, well, if nobody else is doing it, I guess I'll do it. Right. Like, well, which is a lot, that's how we end up here. Right. But it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And I wanted to shift gears a little bit, right? Because this driving force of, if people haven't figured it out yet, you are an educator, if nothing else, right? You were out there getting with people of all ages to get them connected in tons of different ways. And this course you have with Cornell, Let's Go Outside. Like, what was the spark for that project, right? It looks like it was super fun.
Yeah, so I connected with Cornell Lab through one of their educators, Jennifer Fee. She did a program working with kids, and I want to say this was in 2021 is when I started working on the course. And then it was released in 2022, spring of 2022. But they wanted to co-create something that focused on nature connection with adults who want to engage with kids, like how to get them engaged in fostering a relationship with nature, because most of the stuff on Cornell, the courses, the Bird Academy courses are specific to bird ID and not like heavily nature, just like overall nature focused or conservation focused. So it was an opportunity. I don't think I remember how they found out. I feel like most of the time I don't know how people find out about me, because sometimes I'm like, I don't want people to find me. I'm just doing my thing. And then it just happens. And they're like, hey, you person. And I'm like, yes. How did you find me? You
know what it is, right? It's word of mouth. It's somebody that worked with you and they're like, Nicole is fantastic. You should reach out to her. She's excellent at what she does. That's what it is. Because, I mean, obviously, like you said, for that. Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. Don't get me wrong. I think for me, just the introvert side, as far as the peopling, That's the part where I'm just like, actually,
Slow down.
I still need a minute over here. So
Been there.
let me go take a
Been there.
nap,
Yep.
take a walk somewhere, and then I'll
get back
circle
at you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of the times it feels like I have to be on. And, I get that people are excited and they're like, oh, I found out about all these things you're doing. And I'm like, yes, but that was in the moment. It's not right now. That was in that moment when I had that excitement and like, yeah, I want to do things and get out and connect. And then there's moments where I just want to chill and be quiet and like, I don't want to be on. So that's where it's just like most people are connecting with me in that way when I'm not on. So then I'm like, oh, now I have to like get the energy back to get to, the creating. So back to the course. So I think it was for ages 7 to 10. Again, adults wanting to build a connection with children. So like it could be a grandparent and a grandchild. It could be a son and a mom. So those types of relationships where it's like the adult is learning just as much as the child. And I feel like we had a lot of those conversations when we were doing, because it's an asynchronous. So you can take it at your own pace. You can include, some outside time elements. It can be virtual. You can share your stories of those experiences through like a chat feature. And it's interesting because for me, a lot of the work that I do now, because I've done so much working with youth, after school programs, summer camps, like I was very much invested in that earlier on in my career. And then I made a pivot because I'm like, well, adults need this stuff too. Adults just are like, I don't have time for that. Or like, that was for when I was younger. You can't have that sense of wonder anymore. And I'm just like, but you also have memories of your childhood that you reference a lot. And like, you feel like you want to, right, go back to it or have a time where you can just relax and be playful and be curious. And why can't we just allow ourselves to do more of that? So I'm like, there's this combination of the youth perspective and the adult perspective, and they're helping each other. They're coming together to help each other, not just be in teacher mode. And that's something I learned too of being an environmental educator. You're not going to know everything. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Yes.
Let me get back to you. Or
let's figure it out together.
You don't have to have an answer for every single thing. Sometimes you're just left with nothing. And like that is its own, experience and adventure. So I think the expectation that as an educator, as a teacher, that we just have to be this abundance of information that is just spitting out facts creates less of those moments to really be immersed with nature and immersed with the relationship of a young person, and then seeing the value in them. Just because they're young doesn't mean that they don't have a unique perspective to bring to the conversation, or that they're adding value because we're, a lot of the times we're in adult mode. So we want kids to be adults as we're talking to them, but no, they're children. Like they're not going to be thinking in the way that we do as adults. And I have to remind myself and other educators of that a lot, including talking about our emotions as far as like fear and like anxiety and like, just it's a relatable thing that you can still talk about as an adult, especially when, we have more of these topics focused on neurodivergence or autism or Asperger's, like all of these things where it's just like, we're still having trouble communicating and we don't feel seen or heard. So through that medium of like nature time, you can kind of have more of those conversations of like, oh, this is how I'm really feeling, or this is how I'm experiencing life. And because I have this awesome opportunity to connect with nature, I'm again able to have a voice in a way that I hadn't before, to really express myself in a different way.
I love that. Shout out to you for thinking about the young people. And speaking of the young people, when we saw you at Biggest Week in American Birding, you were with young birders. I believe is it the Ohio Young Birders Club?
Yes, Ohio Young Birders Club.
And that's your home state, and you're working on a documentary. I don't know if you can talk about it yet, but can you give us a peek into what that's going to be about?
Yeah, I was reached out to by a few friends via email and some text regarding a project that was happening through partnership with documentary filming company and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And they were working on putting together an IMAX documentary that focused on the awesome natural resources, kind of nature spaces, wildlife of Ohio, the state of Ohio.
Wow. IMAX joint too. What?
Yeah, like the focus was like state parks and like different nature activities and all of these things. So one of the activities that they wanted to highlight was birding. And they found out about the biggest week in American birding and also wanted to include youth in the filming. So we got to do some on the ground filming sessions at McGee Marsh and really just have an experience as a birder and an environmental educator working with youth that are also interested in birds and birding. And it was a fun experience.
Awesome. Yeah, it looked like you were doing some great work there when you were doing it.
Y'all was banding birds when we saw you. And
Yes.
I think you had a chestnut-sided warbler that y'all had, like, were banded and released. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, there was a lot of cool birds. One of the youth that was part of the filming, she was a volunteer bander with her mom. So they actually got to retrieve some of the birds, which was really cool. There's a lot of warblers, including a robin that we got to release. So that was really cool to watch up close and personal, seeing the ornithologists and the banders talk about, what they're doing when they catch the birds and monitoring. So yeah, it was another
Shout out to the Black Swamp Bird Observatory and the homies over there.
Yeah, Black Swamp Bird Observatory. Yeah.
Awesome. And I just, as we get ready to wrap up here, I want to know, what is bringing Nicole bird joy right now? Like what are you looking forward to that's going to fill up your cup, right? Because like we said, you have been one of the most instrumental people to make sure Black Birders Week went off without a hitch. And that work is very much appreciated. So how are we getting some bird joy back into Nicole right now?
I feel like the more I can connect other people to bird watching, that's where my joy is. I don't ever want to consider myself an expert because, again, learning is lifelong. We're not going to know all of the things. But if you can just share a little bit of your passion and joy for what the fullness of life looks like through the natural world, it's so magical. So again, to see someone experience birding for the first time, whether they're getting their first pair of binoculars or they're getting up to join a bird walk or they've seen a warbler for the first time or heard it sing for the first time, I'm literally just like, yay, like that's my joy, is seeing other people engage and connect. And I kind of am just kind of the conduit of that. Like I'm not really, the person that's needing the highlights or the amplification. It's just more of like, actually you can have this piece of joy too, and have, it to go back to when you're not feeling your best or, when you're going through a hard time, again, connecting it to mental health and why it's so beneficial for our mental health, especially in the Black community, because I feel like those joys are very limited for us. So to be able to experience nature connection from that perspective, I think gives us so much more life and like helps us want to explore and adventure more.
It's so, I don't know, you warm my heart because you shared all these stories about the grief and the trauma you went through. And they always say that giving back and being grateful makes a life worth living. And I see you giving back to people and the fact that you love giving back and that's what brings you bird joy.
Yeah.
And keep being you.
That's it.
Thank you.
All right. Before we get you out of here, right? We tried this with Karina last week. We got some rapid fire questions, right? So we're just going to come off the cuff with them and do what you want to do with it. All right. So first one, what's one bird that will always make you stop and smile?
The gray catbird.
If you could plan one dream outdoor education program anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Brazil.
Ooh, I love it. All right.
Yes.
What is your favorite childhood memory of being outside in nature?
One of my childhood homes when I was growing up in Cleveland, I think I was in middle school, and there was a rose bush growing outside of our in the front of our house that was just like, you can tell nobody took care of it. And that was my, oh, I can do something nice for nature, give back to it as it was giving to me. And I took time to tend to the soil and water, and the roses started to bloom. So that was an exciting time for me to be able to experience that and like come out every day and see, you know, if the buds were going to bloom, if the soil was, you know, nice and wet, and like the sun and all of that stuff, it was getting what it needed. That was me again, like nurturing that relationship I have with nature because it had already given me so much.
Love it. What's one nature related book or author that inspire you?
I would say one of the people is Dr. Drew Lanham. He was the very first person that I got to experience as like an actual like ornithologist, conservation biologist person that I could share my bird love with, because I went to a conference where he was the keynote and I got to share my bird joy with him. And I didn't even know he was like, you know, this popular professor person. I just knew he loved birds too. And I'm like, oh, he's a Black guy and like he loves birds. I want to talk to him. And like we actually sat and had a conversation, and I felt really connected because he took the time to talk to me and ask me questions about my bird joy.
Sounds like the homie Drew.
That's incredible. All right, last one. In one word, what do you hope the homies or people feel when they go outside to experience nature?
Love.
Yes. That is so good. That is so good. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. We know you're super busy, so this definitely means a lot to us. So thank you so much. There's so much value in this conversation, and I know our listeners are going to love this.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And make sure you all support Nicole and all the great work she's doing. Black and National Parks Week, In Her Nature. I'm sure you'll continue to be one of the driving forces with Black AF and STEM and Black Birders Week. And literally anything else you're doing, folks, get on board. All right. This person is really special, and we need to lift her up and support her. And she needs to go get some rest now because she's been doing the work.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you all for joining us today on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope you have enjoyed exploring the world of birding, healing, and nature with us today. Shout out to the BIPOC flock. You can check out what we got going on at bipocbirdingclub.org.
And until next time, homies, as usual, shout out to the In Color Birding Club here in Philly, incolorbirding.org. We just dropped some summer stuff, so come out, chill. We'll have a good time.
Yes, please share, subscribe, and shout out the podcast to all your fellow birders, nature lovers, or people that you hope get that love that they deserve outside. Please help us spread a little bird joy.
Peace, y'all. This was lovely.
See y'all later.